They do not earn more than you think. Some of them do, but most of them do not. The person living in the house you drive past and wonder about, the person whose life looks frictionless from the outside, the person who never seems stressed about money the way you are stressed about money, they are not operating on a different income. They are operating on a different instruction set. And that instruction set, the specific invisible code running their daily decisions, is what this video is about. Not their salary, not their investment, not their inheritance, the way they move through a single ordinary day, because that is where the real difference lives. Not in the dramatic moments, in the quiet ones. I want you to think about your morning, not the version you plan, the version that actually happens. You wake up, and within the first 4 minutes, before you have said a word to another human being, your phone is in your hand. Not because you chose it, because it was there. And in those first 4 minutes before your mind has fully arrived in the day, you have already absorbed someone else's highlight reel, someone's vacation, someone's announcement, someone's life performing better than yours on a Tuesday morning before you have even had coffee. And something happens in you, something quiet, something you have probably stopped noticing because it happens every single morning. A low-grade sense that your day is already behind, that somewhere out there things are moving faster than they are moving for you, that the gap between where you are and where you should be is not closing. Rich people have phones too. They wake up in the same world. But here is the first difference, and it is smaller than you expect. The most financially successful people you will ever study share one behavioral pattern that almost nobody talks about. They are obsessive about the first hour of their day, not because of some productivity ritual they read in a book, because they understood something early, either through experience or through someone who told them that the first hour of your day sets the psychological temperature for every decision that follows it. If you begin your day in someone else's world, scrolling through someone else's life, absorbing someone else's priority, you spend the rest of the day making decisions from a place of mild disorientation, not conscious disorientation, the kind that lives just below the surface, the kind that makes you slightly more reactive, slightly more impulsive, slightly more likely to spend something to feel better, slightly less likely to make the patient, strategic, long-term decision that actually changes your financial life. The wealthy do not protect their money first. They protect their mind first, because they know that the mind is where the money is made or lost long before the bank account reflects it. Let me tell you about two men, same city, same age, similar income. The first man, call him David, wakes up at 7, phone is on the nightstand. It is in his hand before his eyes have fully adjusted to the light. By the time he gets to work, he has scrolled through 40 minutes of content that has nothing to do with his life, his goals, or his financial future. He has seen 3 things that made him feel slightly behind. He has absorbed 2 arguments he did not ask to witness. He has looked at someone's new car and felt something he cannot name, but carries with him into the day anyway. David is not a bad person. David is not weak. David is running a morning that was designed by someone else for someone else's financial benefit, not his. The second man, call him Marcus. Marcus wakes up at the same time, but his phone is not on the nightstand. It is across the room. Not because Marcus read a self-help book, because Marcus made one decision 3 years ago that changed everything. He decided that the first 45 minutes of his day belonged to him, not to notifications, not to other people's lives, not to the manufactured urgency of a feed that profits from his attention. To him, he sits with his coffee. He thinks about what he is building. He reads something that moves him forward. And then, only then, he picks up his phone. By the time David has arrived at work, already slightly depleted, Marcus has arrived already aligned, same income, completely different psychological starting position. And that difference, compounded across every working day of a year, produces outcomes that look like luck from the outside. They are not luck. They are the accumulated result of who showed up to the decisions. But here is where it gets deeper, because the morning is just the entry point. What I really want to talk about is something that runs beneath the surface of every financial decision a wealthy person makes, something that took me a long time to see. And once I saw it, I could not stop seeing it everywhere. Rich people have a completely different relationship with discomfort, not a higher tolerance for pain, a different understanding of what discomfort means. When you or I feel financial discomfort, the pressure of not having enough, the anxiety of an uncertain future, the exhaustion of working hard without visible progress, the instinct is to relieve it immediately with something, a purchase, a distraction, an avoidance, a conversation that feels productive but produces nothing, something that makes the discomfort stop, even temporarily. Wealthy people feel the same discomfort. I want to be clear about that. They feel it, but somewhere through experience, through mentorship, through painful trial and error, they learn to read discomfort differently. They learn that financial discomfort is often not a signal to stop. It is a signal that something important is happening, that they are close to something, that the resistance they feel is the exact place where most people turn back. And they stay, not because they enjoy it, because they have learned that the people who stay just a little longer than everyone else in the discomfort, in the uncertainty, in the patience, are the ones who end up in a completely different financial place 5 years later. Think about the last time you were close to something financially, a decision you were considering, an opportunity that required you to be uncomfortable for a period of time before anything would change. What happened in that moment of discomfort? Did you stay, or did you find a reason, a very reasonable, very logical sounding reason to step back? Because here is what I want you to understand about that reason. It felt true. It probably was partially true, but the deeper truth, the one underneath the reasonable reason, was that the discomfort was real and the relief of stepping back was immediate. And the brain will always construct a logical narrative to justify the choice that provides immediate relief. Always. This is not weakness. This is human neurology. But understanding it, seeing it clearly is the beginning of doing something different. Here is the third difference. And this one is the most practical. Rich people spend money differently, not less, differently. The common assumption is that wealthy people are more careful with money, more disciplined, more frugal. Some are, but that is not the defining characteristic. The defining characteristic is intentionality. Wealthy people know with unusual specificity what their money is for, not in a rigid budgeting sense, in a philosophical sense. They have a clear, personal, deeply held definition of what financial freedom means to them. And every spending decision, consciously or unconsciously, gets measured against that definition. Does this move me toward it? Or does this move me away from it? That question asked consistently, applied honestly, is worth more than any financial strategy ever written, because a strategy without a direction is just discipline for its own sake. And discipline for its own sake never lasts. But a decision made in service of something you genuinely want, something you can see clearly, something that belongs specifically to you and not to someone else's definition of success. That decision is sustainable. That decision compounds. That decision, made repeatedly across years, produces the life that looks different from the outside. There is a man I want to tell you about. His name is not important. What matters is what he did. He spent 11 years in a career that paid him well and cost him everything else, not financially, in the ways that are harder to measure: time, presence, the specific kind of energy you only have at certain ages. At 39, after 11 years, he sat in a parking lot outside his office and asked himself a question he had been avoiding for most of a decade. Is this what I am building toward, or is this just what I fell into? And the answer, the honest answer, was the second one. He had fallen into it, not because it was wrong, because he had never clearly defined what right looked like for him. He had spent 11 years making decisions, financial decisions, career decisions, life decisions, without a clear destination, just moving forward in the direction that presented itself, doing what made sense. And making sense is not the same as making meaning. He spent the next 6 months doing something he had never done, defining what he actually wanted, not what he was supposed to want, not what looked impressive, not what his parents had hoped for or his peers had achieved. What he specifically, honestly, privately wanted his life to look like. And when he had that definition, when it was clear and specific and genuinely his, every financial decision became easier. Not effortless, easier, because every decision had a direction to point toward. He is not a billionaire. He does not need to be. He built a life that matches his definition. And that specific private alignment between what he wanted and how he moved is what most people who look wealthy from the outside actually have. Not more money, more clarity. So here is what I want you to sit with. Not a list of habits, not a morning routine to copy, not someone else's definition of financial success to chase. Just 3 questions. The first question: what does the first hour of your day do to the rest of it? Not what should it do, what does it actually do? Be honest, because the answer to that question tells you something important about the psychological starting position from which every financial decision in your day is being made. The second question: what do you do with financial discomfort? Do you stay in it long enough to learn what it is telling you? Or do you find a reasonable reason to step back from it before it can change anything? The third question: what is your money actually for? Not in a budgeting sense, in a meaning sense. What life is it supposed to be building? And is the way you use it honestly daily in the small decisions moving toward that life or away from it? You do not need to answer these questions out loud. You do not need to share them with anyone, but I want you to sit with them, because the distance between where you are financially and where you want to be is not primarily a distance of income. It is a distance of clarity, and clarity does not cost anything. It just requires honesty. Rich people live differently, not because they have more, because they decided at some specific moment, often after significant pain, what more was actually for. And then they built their days around that decision, one quiet choice at a time. That is the difference that does not show up in their bank account first. It shows up in their morning, in the way they read discomfort, in the direction every dollar is pointed. And it is available to you not as a copy of someone else's life, as a deliberately built version of your own. Classy wealth exists for this conversation. The one that goes beneath the surface, the one that talks about money, the way money actually works. Subscribe, because the next video is going to challenge something most people believe deeply about hard work. Specifically, why working harder is often the most expensive mistake a person can make, and what the financially free do instead. That video might reframe everything you currently believe about effort and money. Until then, sit with those 3 questions. Let them work on you. The answers will come. And when they do, everything starts to move differently.